My own children prevented me from saying goodbye to my husband at his funeral. A week later, when I arrived for the reading of the will, Julian looked at me with contempt and said, "This meeting is only for the heirs named in the will." His wife, Jessica, smiled mockingly beside him. Leo nodded from his chair, while Megan whispered something in her husband's ear. I said nothing. I just took a folder out of my purse and handed it to the lawyer in silence. When he opened it, my children turned as pale, as if they had seen a ghost. My name, Eleanor, was on every page as the sole heir. I am a 67-year-old woman who has just discovered that her own children are capable of betraying her in the most cruel way imaginable. I thought I knew Julian and Leo. I raised them with love, educated them, sacrificed my own dreams to give them everything they needed. I worked day and night to keep this family afloat after their father lost his job when they were teenagers. But on the day of my husband's funeral, the man who had been their father for 42 years, they treated me as if I were a stranger, as if I had no right to be there, as if 45 years of marriage meant nothing. Julian pushed me away from the coffin when I tried to say goodbye one last time. "You've had your moment, Mom," he told me coldly. Leo didn't even look at me when the tears began to roll down my cheeks. Their wives, Jessica and Megan, behaved even worse. Jessica went so far as to tell me I was making an unnecessary scene when I broke down seeing my husband's serene face. Megan simply shrugged and muttered, "Family drama isn't appropriate at a funeral." As if my pain were a performance, as if losing the love of my life were just an emotional whim. That night I returned to my empty house, feeling that I had lost not only my husband but also my children. But there was something they didn't know, something my husband and I had planned in secret during his last months of life, when he already sensed that his illness would soon overcome him. My husband had made 2 wills, a fake one that he left visible on his desk, where he divided everything between Julian and Leo, and a real one, kept in a safe that only I knew about, where he left everything to me. He had noticed the changes in our sons long before I did. He had seen how they treated me with less respect each year that passed. He had overheard their conversations about the inheritance when they thought we weren't nearby. "Eleanor," he told me one night as he took his medication, "our sons have changed. They are no longer the boys we raised with so much love. They have become ambitious and cruel. This will is to protect you when I'm gone." I didn't want to believe him then. I thought he was being too hard on them. How wrong I was. The week after the funeral was an emotional roller coaster. Julian called me exactly once to ask if I needed anything, but his tone was so cold and formal that I knew he was only fulfilling a social obligation. Leo didn't even bother to contact me. Their wives, of course, disappeared completely from my life, as if they had never been part of this family. When I received the call from the lawyer for the reading of the will, my heart raced. I knew the moment of truth had arrived. I knew my sons were in for the surprise of their lives. But I also knew that once I revealed the real will, there would be no going back. The relationship with them would be broken forever. I dressed in my best black suit, the same one I had worn to meet my husband's parents decades ago. I put on the pearl earrings he had given me for our 20th anniversary. I wanted to look dignified, strong, imposing. I wanted my sons to remember this moment for the rest of their lives. I arrived at the lawyer's office 5 minutes before the scheduled time. Julian and Leo were already there with their wives, laughing and talking in low voices as if they were at a social gathering. When they saw me enter, their faces tensed slightly, but they didn't get up to greet me. Jessica looked me up and down with disdain. Megan pretended to check her phone to avoid eye contact. I sat in the chair farthest from them, feeling the tension fill the room like thick smoke. The lawyer, an older man named Mr. Albright, who had been my husband's friend for years, gave me a compassionate look before beginning with the legal protocols. "Before we begin," Julian said, interrupting the lawyer, "I want to clarify that this meeting is solely for the heirs mentioned in our father's will." He looked directly into my eyes as he added, "Mom, you can stay if you want, but this doesn't really concern you." Leo nodded with a smile that chilled my blood. Their wives exchanged satisfied glances, as if they had just won a battle. That was the moment I knew my husband had been right about everything. Our sons had become cruel and ambitious strangers. There was nothing left of the love and respect I had hoped for from them. They were no longer my boys. They were two adult men who saw their own mother as an obstacle to their greed. I took a deep breath and pulled the folder out of my purse. I placed it on the table calmly, without saying a word. Mr. Albright looked at me with curiosity but asked no questions. He knew there was more at play. My sons, on the other hand, didn't even notice my gesture. They were too busy mentally calculating how much money they were going to receive. "We will now proceed with the official reading," Mr. Albright announced, opening the envelope that Julian had given him the week before. He began to read the fake will in a clear, professional voice. "I, in full possession of my mental faculties, leave all my assets to my sons, Julian and Leo, in equal parts." Jessica squeezed her husband's hand with excitement. Megan smiled broadly. Leo leaned back in his chair with satisfaction. But then I raised my hand. "Excuse me, Mr. Albright," I said in a firm voice. "I believe there is a mistake. That is not my husband's valid will." I pushed the folder towards him. "This is the real document, certified and signed before a notary, just 3 months before his death." The silence that followed was deafening. Mr. Albright opened the folder with trembling hands. His eyes moved quickly from side to side as he read the first lines. Julian sat up abruptly in his chair. "What are you talking about, Mom? That will we just read is official. Dad showed it to us personally." "Your father showed you what he wanted you to see," I replied without losing my composure. "But the legal and binding will is this one, the one that has been in my hands since the day of his death." Mr. Albright continued reading, his face growing paler by the moment. Leo approached the desk, trying to see the documents over the lawyer's shoulder. "Mrs. Eleanor," Mr. Albright said finally, "this will is duly certified and dated. It is subsequent to the other document, therefore it nullifies any previous provisions." He cleared his throat before continuing. "According to this document, you inherit the entirety of your husband's assets. The house, the bank accounts, the investments, the life insurance, everything is in your name." The reaction was immediate and explosive. Julian stood up so violently that his chair fell backward. "That's impossible. Dad would never do something like that. You manipulated him in his final days." Jessica shouted something about undue influence and taking advantage of a sick man. Leo was paralyzed, his mouth open, unable to process what he had just heard. Megan was the first to regain her composure, but her voice trembled with rage when she spoke. "This is a scam. A woman your age doesn't know how to handle that much money. You're going to squander it all and leave us with nothing." Her comment about my age was like a slap in the face, as if my 67 years automatically made me mentally incompetent. "A scam?" I repeated, slowly rising from my chair. "You want to talk about scams? You want to talk about manipulating an elderly person?" My voice began to rise for the first time in the entire meeting. "You spent the last 2 years of your father's life pressuring him for money. Julian, how many times did you go to him for loans you never paid back?" Julian blushed, but maintained his defiant attitude. "That's different. We're his sons. We have a right to expect his support." Leo nodded vigorously. "Besides, Mom, let's be realistic. You've already lived your life. We have families to support, mortgages to pay, futures to build." His words hurt me more than I expected. "I've already lived my life?" I whispered. "Is that what you think of me? That I'm a useless old woman waiting to die?" Tears began to form in my eyes, but I held them back. I would not give them the satisfaction of seeing me cry. Jessica approached me with false compassion. "Eleanor, no one is saying you're useless, but you have to admit that managing such a large inheritance is complicated. We can help you. We can manage the money for you." Her smile was sweet, but her eyes shone with pure greed. "Like you managed the money I lent you last year for Leo's business?" I asked. "The money you never paid back? The money you spent on a vacation to Europe while I was eating canned soup to save money?" Leo looked down but didn't deny anything. His silence was a confession. Mr. Albright cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Mrs. Eleanor, if you'll allow me to continue with the reading of the will, there are some additional provisions I must mention." I sat back down, discreetly wiping away the tears that had managed to escape. My sons remained standing, as if sitting down would be an admission of defeat. "Your husband also left a personal letter addressed to you," the lawyer continued, "and a statement explaining his reasons for this decision. He took a sealed envelope from the folder and handed it to me. My hands trembled slightly as I took it. It was my husband's handwriting, my name written with the affection of 4 decades together. Julian tried to take the letter from me. If it concerns the family, we have a right to hear it. This letter is for me, I said firmly, pulling it away. Your father was very clear about that. I opened the envelope carefully, as if it were a fragile treasure, and in a way it was. My dearest Eleanor, the letter began. If you are reading this, it means our sons have shown their true nature. For months, I have watched how they treat you with contempt and condescension. I have seen how they plan our future without considering you. That is why I have made this decision. I looked up at Julian and Leo. Their faces reflected a mixture of panic and fury. They knew that whatever that letter said, it would not be favorable to them. I continued reading in silence, but Jessica couldn't contain herself. Read it out loud. If we're going to be disinherited, we at least have a right to know why. Her voice was shrill, desperate. Megan immediately supported her. That's right, we deserve an explanation. I looked at Mr. Albright, who nodded slightly. I took a deep breath and began to read my late husband's words aloud. For months, I have watched how they treat you with contempt and condescension. Julian speaks to you as if you were a housekeeper. Leo acts as if your opinions have no value. Their wives see you as a nuisance they must tolerate. That's not true, Leo interrupted. We respect Mom. But his protest sounded hollow even to himself. I continued reading without paying him any mind. I have decided to leave you everything because you are the only person in this family who deserves my trust and respect. I continued reading my husband's letter. Our sons have forgotten the values we taught them. They have forgotten the sacrifice you made for them all these years. They love you only when they need something from you. Julian slammed his fist on the table. This is manipulation. Dad was sick, confused by the medication. But I knew the truth. My husband had been lucid until the very end. More lucid than our sons could imagine. He had seen what I had refused to see for years. Your father wrote this letter 3 days before he died, I said, closing the envelope. He was completely conscious. In fact, he asked me to read it in front of you if you ever questioned his decisions. I put the letter in my purse as if it were the most valuable thing I owned. And perhaps it was. Mr. Albright cleared his throat again. There is one more provision in the will that I must read. All eyes turned to him. The deceased specifies that if either of his sons attempts to contest this will or question their wife's mental capacity to manage the inheritance, they will automatically lose any right to receive the small monthly allowance he has left them. Small allowance? Megan asked, her voice barely audible. He left us something after all? The lawyer nodded and consulted his documents. He has left you each $500 a month for 2 years, on the condition that you treat your mother with respect and do not interfere in her financial decisions. $500. After a lifetime of waiting for a millionaire inheritance, that was what they would receive. Jessica burst out laughing, but it was a hysterical, desperate laugh. $500? Is that what we're worth to him? To you? She pointed an accusing finger at me, as if I were responsible for my husband's decisions. You are worth exactly what you have shown you are worth, I replied calmly. For years I watched you treat your father like an ATM. I saw you eagerly waiting for him to die so you could inherit. Do you think he didn't notice your looks when he talked about going to the doctor? Do you think he didn't hear your conversations about how much time he had left? Leo slumped into his chair, finally understanding the magnitude of what they had lost. Mom, please, we can fix this. We can talk like a family. His voice sounded different now, almost pleading. But it was too late for please. Like a family? I said. When was the last time you treated me like family? When was the last time you invited me to dinner without asking for money first? When was the last time Jessica spoke to me without that condescending tone she uses with me? Jessica opened her mouth to protest but closed it immediately. She knew I was right. Julian tried a different approach. Okay, we admit we've made mistakes, but you're our mother. Blood is thicker than any resentment. We can start over. He approached me with his arms outstretched as if to hug me. I instinctively stepped back. Start over? I whispered. Like when we started over after you told me I was a burden when your father lost his job? Like when we started over after Leo told me I should move into a nursing home so I wouldn't be in your way? Like when we started over after your wives told me my advice was no longer needed because I belonged to another generation? Each question was like a slap in the face to them. I could see in their faces that they remembered every incident, every cruel moment they thought I had forgotten, but I remembered everything, every slight, every hurtful comment, every time they made me feel invisible in my own family. Megan stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. A woman your age can't handle that much money alone. You're going to be a victim of scammers. You're going to make bad financial decisions. You need our help. Her concern sounded fake, calculated. It was the last resort of someone watching a fortune slip away. My age again? I said, standing up as well. You know what? You're right. I am an older woman, but I am also a woman who worked for 40 years, who managed a household, who raised 2 children, who cared for a sick husband. If I could do all that, I think I can handle a bank account. Mr. Albright began to gather the documents, a sign that the meeting was officially over. Mrs. Eleanor, I will need you to come in tomorrow to sign some papers and transfer the accounts to your name. The process should be completed within a week. My sons exchanged desperate glances. They knew their last chance was slipping away. Julian approached one more time, this time with tears in his eyes. Mom, please, we are your family, your only family. Are you really going to abandon us for money? His tears might have worked before. They might have softened my heart if I had seen them a year ago, a month ago, even a week ago. But after the funeral, after how they treated me in the most painful moment of my life, those tears came too late. Abandon you for money? I said. You were the first ones to talk about money. You were the ones who treated me as if I were nothing more than an obstacle to your inheritance. I am only protecting what your father wanted me to protect, my dignity. Leo approached as well, flanking me with his brother. For a moment, I felt a pang of fear. They were 2 large men, and I was just an older woman. But Mr. Albright was still there, a witness to everything that was happening. They wouldn't dare do anything physical. Listen to us, Leo said in a hoarse voice. We can reach an agreement. We don't want all the money. We just want our fair share. We are his sons. We worked hard our whole lives waiting for this moment. His confession was more honest than he intended. It confirmed that their entire relationship with me had been a long-term investment. Your fair share? I asked. What is the fair share for a mother who gave you everything and received contempt in return? What is the fair share for a woman who sacrificed her own dreams to secure yours? My voice broke slightly, but I maintained my composure. Jessica, who had been quiet for the last few minutes, finally exploded. You are a selfish and vengeful old woman. That money should be for the next generations, not for you to waste on your senile whims. Her words were pure venom, designed to hurt me to the core. But this time, instead of hurting me, her insults strengthened me. They reminded me why my husband had made this decision. They reminded me why I had to stand firm. Thank you, Jessica, I said with a sad smile. You have just proven exactly why your husband will not inherit a single penny more than what his father decided to give him. I walked out of the lawyer's office with my head held high, but inside, my whole body was trembling. 45 years of marriage, 38 years of being a mother, and it had all ended in that room full of shouting and recriminations. My sons followed me to the street, their voices mingling in a desperate chorus of pleas and threats. Mom, this can't end like this, Julian yelled as I walked to my car. We're going to contest that will. We're going to prove that Dad wasn't in his right mind. Jessica supported him from behind, promising they would get the best lawyers in the country. Leo remained silent, but his silence was more threatening than his brother's shouts. I stopped by my car and turned to face them one last time. Do it, I said in a firm voice. Contest the will. But remember that your father was very clear. Any attempt to question his decisions will result in the complete loss of that small monthly allowance he left you. Megan turned pale when she heard this. $500 wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. That night, alone in my house, I allowed myself to cry for the first time since the funeral. I cried for my husband, for the family I thought I had, for the years lost trying to earn the love of children who only saw me as a source of money. But I also cried with relief. I was finally free from their expectations, from their constant demands, from their barely concealed contempt. The next day, I returned to Mr. Albright's office to complete the paperwork. The bank accounts, the investments, the house, everything officially passed into my name. When I saw the numbers on the bank statements, I almost fainted. My husband had been much more careful with money than I had imagined. He had saved, invested, and multiplied our resources for decades. It was a fortune that could last me the rest of my life and more. But it wasn't just the money that moved me. It was the freedom. For the first time in my adult life, I didn't have to consult with anyone about my decisions. I didn't have to justify my expenses, my plans, my dreams. I could do whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted, however I wanted. My first decision was to move. That house was full of painful memories, of tense conversations, of moments when I felt like a stranger in my own home. I hired a real estate agency and put the property up for sale. It was a large house in an exclusive neighborhood. It would sell quickly and for a lot of money. In the meantime, I temporarily checked into a luxury hotel in the city center. It was something I had never allowed myself before, but now I could. A room with an ocean view, room service, a spa, everything I wanted. For the first time in decades, I felt pampered, cared for, valued. It was in that hotel that I received the first desperate call from Julian. "Mom, we saw the house on real estate sites. Are you really going to sell the family home?" His voice was broken, as if he had finally understood that this was real, that it wasn't just a temporary tantrum on my part. "It's not the family home," I replied. "It's my house. Your father left it to me. I can do with it whatever I want." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could imagine him calculating how much the property was worth, how much money he was losing with each passing day. "Where are you going to live?" he finally asked. "Are you moving far away? How are we going to see you?" It was funny how he was now concerned about seeing me, when for years he had found excuses to avoid family visits. "I'm going to buy something smaller," I told him, "something that is truly mine, a place where I can be happy." I didn't tell him that I had already seen some beautiful condos with ocean views. I didn't tell him that I was considering moving to another city entirely. That information was none of his business. Leo called that same night, but with a different approach. "Mom, I've been thinking about everything that happened. Maybe we were too hard on you. Maybe we didn't appreciate everything you did for us." His apology sounded rehearsed, calculated. He was the smarter brother, the one who understood that honey attracts more flies than vinegar. "Maybe," I said. "Leo, you treated me as if I were invisible for years. You made me feel like a burden in my own family. And now that there's money involved, maybe you were too hard?" His breathing quickened on the other end of the line. He knew I had seen through him. "It's not about the money," he lied. "It's because I realized we could lose you forever. You're our mother. We need you." But I no longer needed to be needed. For decades I had lived for others. I had existed to serve, to give, to sacrifice. Now I wanted to live for myself. The calls continued for days. Julian alternated between desperate pleas and veiled threats. Leo maintained his strategy of feigning repentance. Their wives also called, each with her own version of apologies that sounded hollow and late. But I had made a decision. It wasn't just about the money, though the money was important. It was about respect, dignity, the right to live my final years in peace. It was about breaking a pattern of emotional abuse that had lasted for far too long. A week after the will reading, as I was having breakfast on the hotel terrace watching the sunrise over the ocean, I received a notification on my phone. The house had been sold, for above the asking price. I now had enough money to buy whatever I wanted, go wherever I wanted, be whoever I wanted. I got up from the table and walked to the balcony. The salt air filled my lungs, and for the first time in months, I smiled genuinely. My sons thought they had lost an inheritance. I had gained my freedom. 3 weeks after selling the house, I moved into a beautiful oceanfront condo in an exclusive part of the city. It was modern, bright, with enormous windows that let in sunlight all day long. In the mornings, I drank coffee watching the seagulls fly over the waves. In the afternoons, I read on my terrace as the sun set on the horizon. It was the life I had always dreamed of but never dared to live. It was Brenda, my new neighbor, who told me about the luxury shopping center that had just opened near my new home. "You should go," she told me during one of our casual encounters in the lobby. "They have incredible stores and a lovely cafe on the second floor." I hadn't gone shopping for pleasure in years. It had always been utilitarian, quick, focused on necessities. I decided to treat myself. I dressed in an elegant red dress I had bought the week before, put on my best shoes, and went out to explore my new life. The shopping center was stunning, filled with stores I had previously only seen in magazines. I stopped in front of a jewelry store, admiring a pearl necklace that sparkled under the special lights. "Can I help you with anything?" the saleswoman asked with a professional smile. She was young, elegant, with that helpful attitude you only see in expensive shops. "I'm just looking," I replied, but she insisted on showing me several pieces. There were diamond earrings, gold bracelets, rings that cost more than many people's annual salary. I was trying on a particularly beautiful bracelet when I heard familiar voices near the entrance of the store. My heart raced before my mind fully processed what was happening. It was Jessica, talking loudly on the phone to someone, complaining bitterly about selfish women who don't think about the next generation. I turned slowly and saw her standing by a display of watches, gesturing dramatically as she spoke. She was wearing a cheap dress that tried to look elegant but failed miserably. Her shoes were worn, and her purse, though clean, showed obvious signs of overuse. It was clear she was having financial difficulties. "Yes, $500 a month," she was saying into the phone. "Can you believe the pettiness? A woman who has millions and gives us $500 as if we were beggars." She hadn't noticed my presence yet. She was too focused on her bitter conversation and endless complaints. The saleswoman asked if I wanted to take the bracelet. "Yes," I said without taking my eyes off Jessica. "And also those emerald earrings you showed me earlier." The total price was considerable, equivalent to several months of the average salary. But I paid without blinking. The sound of the transaction, the beep of the card machine, finally caught Jessica's attention. When she saw me, her face went through several different colors. First surprise, then embarrassment, and finally, a poorly concealed anger. She abruptly ended her phone call and walked towards me with a determined stride. "Eleanor," she said with a forcedly sweet voice, "what a surprise to find you here." "Hello, Jessica," I replied naturally, as if it were a normal, casual encounter. "I was just buying myself some gifts. It's amazing what a woman can do with her own money, isn't it?" My comment was deliberately pointed, designed to remind her exactly who was in control now. Her eyes immediately went to the jewelry store bags in my hands. I could see her mental calculations, trying to estimate how much I had spent, how much money I was wasting on luxuries she believed belonged to her. "It seems you're adjusting well to your new situation," she said with a forced smile. "Very well," I confirmed. "In fact, I've never felt better. I have a beautiful condo, I'm meeting new people, I'm enjoying things I never thought I could afford." Every word was a reminder of everything she had lost due to her greed and cruelty. Jessica tried to change her strategy. "You know, Eleanor, we've been thinking a lot about what happened. Maybe we all overreacted because of the pain of losing. Well, you know, grief makes us say things we don't really mean." Her performance was pathetic, desperate, completely transparent. "Grief?" I said. "Is that what you call the way you treated me during my husband's funeral? Is grief what made you prevent me from saying goodbye to the man I loved for 45 years? My voice rose slightly, attracting the attention of other customers in the store. The saleswoman approached discreetly, asking if everything was all right. "Perfectly," I assured her. "Just a family conversation." But Jessica looked increasingly uncomfortable with the attention we were drawing. It was obvious she didn't want strangers to witness this conversation. "Maybe we could talk in private," she suggested, looking nervously at the other customers. "There's a cafe nearby where we could sit and talk like civilized people." It was funny how she now wanted to be civilized when for years she had been anything but with me. "I have nothing to talk to you about in private," I replied firmly. "If you have something to say to me, you can say it right here." My refusal visibly destabilized her. She was used to controlling situations, to manipulating conversations for her benefit. But now, I had the power. Fine, she said, taking a deep breath. I wanted to apologize. We all want to apologize. We know we were too hard on you, and we want to make it up to you in some way. Her apology came months too late, but I decided to hear what she had to offer. Make it up to me? I asked with genuine curiosity. How do you plan to make up for years of contempt and humiliation? How are you going to make up for the fact that you treated me as if I were invisible in my own family? Jessica swallowed hard. She clearly hadn't expected me to be so direct. We could start by including you more in family decisions, she offered weakly. We could have regular family dinners, celebrate birthdays together, be a real family again. It was almost comical how she thought I would want to be a part of her toxic version of a family again. A real family? I repeated with a bitter laugh. Jessica, a real family doesn't exclude the matriarch from the patriarch's funeral. A real family doesn't treat their elders like unwanted burdens. A real family doesn't eagerly await the death of their parents to inherit their money. Each word was like a slap to her. Her mask of false sweetness finally cracked. Fine, she said with a tense voice. Maybe we weren't perfect. But you weren't the perfect mother either. You were always too controlling, too critical. You never let us make our own decisions. It was typical of her to flip the situation and become the victim. Controlling? I asked. For working 2 jobs to support you when your father lost his? For sacrificing my own dreams to ensure you could go to college? For taking care of you when you were sick? For supporting you through every crisis? For always being there whenever you needed me? Jessica was speechless for a moment, but quickly regained her defensive attitude. That was years ago, Eleanor. Things change, families evolve. You can't cling to the past forever. It was incredible how she minimized decades of sacrifice as if they were simple anecdotes from the past. You're right, I said with a calm that bewildered her. Families do evolve, and I have evolved too. I have evolved into a woman who no longer accepts being treated like trash by people who only value me when they need something. My words resonated in the silence of the jewelry store. At that moment, as if fate had orchestrated the perfect encounter, Julian appeared, running towards us. Clearly, Jessica had sent him a message when she saw me. He arrived flustered, sweaty, with that desperate look I had learned to recognize over the past few weeks. Mom, he panted, trying to catch his breath. Thank God we found you. We've been looking for you all over the city. His dramatic entrance drew even more attention from the other customers. An elderly lady with a cane stopped completely to watch the spectacle. You were looking for me? I asked, feigning surprise. Why? Am I suddenly important enough for you to look for me now? Julian exchanged a nervous glance with Jessica. It was obvious they had planned this conversation, but they didn't expect me to be so direct. Mom, please, Julian pleaded. We need to talk. Leo is waiting at the cafe upstairs. We can sort all this out as a family. It was curious how the word family kept appearing in their mouths now that money was involved. Leo is here too? I asked. What is this, a family ambush? My tone was light, almost amused, but inside I felt a mixture of sadness and anger. Even now, even after everything that had happened, they were still trying to manipulate me. It's not an ambush, Jessica lied. We just want to clear things up. We want you to know that we deeply regret what happened. We were hurting, confused by the loss. We weren't thinking clearly. Their excuses sounded rehearsed, as if they had practiced this speech several times. You know what? I said, picking up my shopping bags. You're right. Let's talk, but not in private. Let's talk right here, where everyone can hear. Jessica turned pale at the suggestion. Let's go to the cafe, she insisted. It will be more comfortable. No, I replied firmly. If you have something to say to me, you can say it here. After all, you had no problem humiliating me publicly at the funeral. Why do you want privacy now? Julian looked around desperately, noticing that several people were listening to our conversation. Fine, he sighed in defeat. Mom, we've been talking among ourselves, and we realized we made terrible mistakes. We let negative emotions get the best of us, and we hurt you deeply. His confession sounded sincere, but I knew my sons too well. What negative emotions exactly? I asked. Greed? Impatience for your father to die? Contempt for me, For being an older woman? Each question was like a dart aimed directly at the heart of their real motivations. Jessica tried to interrupt, but I silenced her with a look. No, let him speak. I want to hear exactly what those negative emotions were that led you to treat me the way you did. Julian shifted uncomfortably, clearly regretting having used that phrase. Maybe we were afraid, he admitted finally. Afraid that things would change, afraid of losing the stability we had always known. It was the most honest explanation I had heard from him in years, but it was still full of self-pity. Afraid of losing stability? I said. Julian, you are adult men with your own jobs and families. What stability depended on your father's death? My question left him speechless. He couldn't admit that his financial stability depended on an inheritance without confessing his greed. The tension in the jewelry store was palpable. Other customers were pretending to examine jewelry while clearly listening to every word of our conversation. The saleswoman kept herself busy rearranging displays, but it was obvious she was also tuned into the drama unfolding in her store. Look, Jessica said finally, maybe we could reach some kind of agreement. We're not asking for all the money, just a fair share. Something that acknowledges that we are also family, that we also have rights. Her proposal was pathetic in its transparency. A fair share? I asked. Your father already decided what your fair share was, $500 a month for 2 years. That was his conscious and informed decision. Julian winced at hearing the figure mentioned in public. But that's not enough to live on, he protested. We have expenses, responsibilities, families to support. His complaint revealed exactly what I suspected. They had been counting on the inheritance to solve their financial problems. Then work harder, I replied simply. Do what the rest of the world does. Work to earn a living instead of waiting for your parents to die to solve your financial problems. The stark reality of my words hit them like a bucket of cold water. At that moment, Leo arrived, clearly sent by Jessica, when she realized the conversation wasn't going according to her plans. He had Megan by the hand, both wearing calculatedly concerned expressions. It was like watching a poorly acted play where all the actors had forgotten their lines. Mom, Leo said with a trembling voice. They told us you were here. We've been so worried about you. Megan nodded vigorously, feigning a concern she had never shown before. It was almost insulting how little effort they put into appearing genuine. Worried? I asked. Why? Because I'm finally living my life the way I want to live it? Because for the first time in decades, I'm not available to solve your problems? My tone was calm, but my words cut like knives. It's not that, Megan lied. It's just that, well, a woman your age living alone, handling so much money, there are a lot of scammers out there who take advantage of older people. Her false concern for my well-being was so transparent it was comical. Like how you took advantage of me for years, I asked directly. Like how you asked for loans you never paid back? Like how you expected me to maintain your expenses while you saved for your own luxuries? Megan blushed, knowing that every accusation was true. Leo tried to take control of the situation. Mom, maybe we could go somewhere more private to talk. This isn't appropriate for a public place. But I was enjoying every moment of their discomfort. For years they had humiliated me in private. It was time for them to experience public shame. Not appropriate? I said. Like it wasn't appropriate for you to kick me out of my husband's funeral? Like it wasn't appropriate for you to tell me I had no right to be at the will reading? Each word resonated in the silence of the jewelry store, where other customers were now openly listening to the drama. Julian looked nervously around, noticing the faces watching us. People are listening, Mom, he muttered. Do you really want strangers to know about our family problems? His concern for public image was telling. Strangers? I asked loudly, addressing the other customers. You know what? These are my sons. I raised them with love. I gave them everything I had. I sacrificed my own dreams for them. And when their father died, they kicked me out of his funeral because they wanted to inherit faster. The expressions of shock on the onlookers' faces were immediate. Mom, stop! Leo shouted, but it was too late. The other customers began to murmur among themselves, clearly outraged by what they had just heard. An elderly lady approached me and put a comforting hand on my shoulder. Dear, she said in a gentle voice, I am so sorry for what you're going through, but I'm glad to see you're standing up for yourself. Her support strengthened me even more. For the first time in years, strangers were showing me more compassion than my own family. Jessica tried to do damage control. "There are misunderstandings," she said, addressing the onlookers. "Emotions are very high after a family loss." But her explanation sounded hollow after everything they had already heard. "There are no misunderstandings," I said clearly. "These are the facts. My sons kicked me out of my husband's funeral. They excluded me from the will reading. And now that they've discovered that I inherited everything, they suddenly want to be a loving family again." The brutal honesty of my statement left everyone in silence. A young couple who had been examining engagement rings came over. "Excuse me," the man said, "but what you're describing is terrible. Did your own sons really treat you like that?" His direct question put my sons in an impossible position. It's more complicated than that," Julian stammered. "There have been family tensions, misunderstandings," but his excuses sounded pathetic compared to my direct testimony. Leo tried to take my arm to pull me away from the growing audience. "Don't touch me," I said firmly, stepping away from him. "For years you touched me when it was convenient. You hugged me when you needed something. You kissed me when you wanted money. But when I really needed you, in the most painful moment of my life, you turned your backs on me." My voice broke slightly, but I maintained my composure. Megan made one last desperate attempt. "Eleanor, we all make mistakes, but family is forever. We can forgive and move on." Her plea was particularly hypocritical, coming from someone who had been one of the cruelest to me. "Family is forever?" I asked. "Where was that philosophy when you told me I had no right to say goodbye to my husband? Where was that family loyalty when you treated me as if I were a stranger at the funeral?" Megan had no answer for that. The jewelry store saleswoman approached discreetly. "Ma'am," she said in a low voice, "if you need to call security or if you feel uncomfortable, I can help you." Her offer moved me. A stranger was offering me more protection than my own children. "Thank you," I replied, "but I can handle this." I turned to my sons one last time. "You have 5 minutes to tell me exactly what you want. After that, I'm leaving, and I don't want to see you again unless it's absolutely necessary." My ultimatum took them by surprise. Leo took a deep breath. "We want a second chance," he finally said. "We want to prove that we can be better sons, that we can treat you with the respect you deserve." It was the first time he had admitted they hadn't respected me. "A second chance? For what? So you can inherit everything? To treat me well only because I'm rich now?" My question went straight to the heart of their true motivations. "It's not about the money," Julian lied, but his lie was so obvious that even the strangers present exchanged skeptical glances. "It's because we realized we need you, that family is the most important thing." "You need me?" I repeated with a bitter laugh. "You need me now? Where was that need when your father was dying and I needed emotional support? Where was it when I was left alone in that huge house, crying every night without any of you bothering to call?" My voice rose, charged with years of repressed pain. The audience that had formed around us murmured with indignation. An elderly lady came closer and said loudly, "You should be ashamed of yourselves. Treating your own mother like that is unforgivable." Other voices joined in, creating a chorus of disapproval that made my sons visibly cringe. Leo tried one last desperate strategy. He took out his phone and started showing me pictures. "Look, Mom," he said with a broken voice. "These are your grandchildren. They miss you. They ask about their grandmother constantly." The photos showed the children in their school activities, at birthday parties, in family moments where I was noticeably absent. "My grandchildren?" I asked, taking the phone to see the pictures better. "The same grandchildren who didn't invite me to their last birthday party because it would be too complicated? The grandchildren who don't even know my phone number because their parents never gave it to them?" I handed the phone back without showing any emotion. Megan began to cry, but her tears seemed more of frustration than genuine remorse. "We didn't know how to include you," she sobbed. "After Dad got sick, everything became so complicated. We didn't want to bother you with our problems." Her excuses were pathetic, and everyone present could see it. "You didn't want to bother me?" I asked incredulously. "But you did want to bother me by constantly asking for loans? You did want to bother me when you needed free childcare? You did want to bother me when you needed me to cook for your parties without paying me?" Each example I gave resonated with painful truth. Julian looked around the store, noticing how the other customers were looking at them with open disgust. "Please, Mom," he whispered. "People are recording with their phones. This could end up on social media." His concern for public image revealed his true priorities. "And that worries you?" I asked. "You're worried that people will find out how you treat your mother? Maybe you should have worried about that before you publicly humiliated me at the funeral." My response drew murmurs of approval from the onlookers. A young woman who had been recording came over. "Ma'am," she said, "your story is inspiring. Seeing a woman stand up for herself after so much abuse is powerful. Would you mind if I shared this on my social media? I think a lot of people need to hear your message." Her request took me by surprise. I looked at my sons, who turned pale at the possibility of their behavior going viral. "Go ahead," I told the young woman. "Let the whole world know how these men treated the woman who gave them life." Jessica practically fainted when she heard my permission. "You can't do that," Leo shouted. "That will ruin our reputations, our jobs, our social relationships." Their panic was delicious to watch. They were finally understanding the consequences of their actions. "Like you ruined my dignity?" I asked calmly. "Like you ruined the last moments I could have had with my husband? Like you ruined my right to grieve in peace?" Each question was a direct blow to their conscience, if they had any left. Julian made one last, desperate attempt. He knelt on the marble floor of the jewelry store, in front of all the onlookers. "Mom, please," he pleaded with tears in his eyes. "Forgive us. We'll do whatever it takes to make it up to you. We'll work for the rest of our lives to earn your forgiveness." His dramatic display drew even more attention, but I had made my decision long before this encounter. "Julian," I said in a firm but not cruel voice, "get up. Dignity is not recovered by kneeling when it's already too late. It's built by treating people well when it still matters." He slowly got up, defeated. "Listen to me carefully," I said, addressing all four of them one last time. "Your father made the right decision in his will. He saw what I refused to see for years, that you didn't love me, you only loved what I could give you. Now that you know the truth, we can stop pretending." The silence that followed was absolute. I took my shopping bags and walked towards the exit of the jewelry store. The onlookers parted respectfully, some applauding discreetly. At the door, I stopped and turned one last time. "You can keep that $500 a month," I said. "You're going to need it more than I do." And with those words, I closed that chapter of my life forever. 6 months after that encounter in the jewelry store, my life had completely changed. I moved to a coastal city, 3 hours away, where no one knew my family story and where I could simply be Eleanor, a 67-year-old woman who had decided to live for herself for the first time in decades. I bought a small but beautiful house with an ocean view, where every morning I had breakfast on my terrace listening to the sound of the waves. I adopted an orange cat whom I named Albright in honor of the lawyer who helped me reclaim my dignity. I enrolled in painting classes, something I had always wanted to do but never had the time. The video of my confrontation with my children went viral, as the young woman at the jewelry store had predicted. Millions of people saw it, and the comments were overwhelmingly supportive of me. Hundreds of older women shared their own stories of family abuse, ungrateful children, and years lost serving families who didn't value their sacrifices. The impact on my sons' reputations was devastating. Julian lost his job when the video reached his boss, who publicly stated that his company did not tolerate employees who mistreated the elderly. Leo had to close his small business when clients started canceling contracts after seeing how he treated his own mother. Jessica and Megan also faced social consequences. Their friend groups excluded them, their neighbors avoided them, and even at the supermarket, people recognized and pointed at them. The public shame they had feared so much materialized in the most painful way possible. They tried to contact me several times during those months, phone calls I didn't answer, letters I returned unopened, emails I automatically blocked. They even went so far as to hire a lawyer to try to contest the will, but as Mr. Albright had warned, they automatically lost their small monthly allowance for that attempt. One afternoon, while I was painting a seascape in my new studio, I received an unexpected visit. It was Brenda, my former neighbor, who had driven 3 hours to see me. "I had to tell you," she said with excitement. Your sons showed up at the building last week, asking for your new address. What did you tell them? I asked without stopping my painting. I told them I had no idea where you were, Brenda replied with a conspiratorial smile. But I also told them that if they had ever truly loved their mother, they would leave her to live in peace. Her loyalty moved me deeply. She told me they looked haggard, that Jessica had aged years in just a few months, that Leo had lost weight and looked constantly nervous. Guilt is eating them alive, Brenda observed. But so is the financial loss. Apparently they're facing serious financial problems. Their financial problems didn't surprise me. For years they had lived beyond their means, counting on an inheritance they thought was a sure thing. Now they had to face the reality of their irresponsible financial decisions without the safety net they had taken for granted. A few days after Brenda's visit, while walking on the beach at sunset, I reflected on the journey I had taken. I had lost my sons, but I had gained my freedom. I had lost a dysfunctional family, but I had found inner peace. I had lost years of happiness, but I had regained my dignity. The money I inherited allowed me to live comfortably, but the most valuable thing I gained was self-respect. For the first time in my adult life, my decisions were my own. My time was my own. My future was my own. I didn't have to justify my expenses, my plans, my dreams to anyone. I established a small foundation to help older women facing family abuse or neglect. Every month, I donated part of my inheritance to support shelters, legal aid programs, and emotional support services. It was my way of transforming my pain into something positive for other women in similar situations. On quiet nights, sitting on my terrace with Albright purring on my lap, I sometimes thought of my sons, not with resentment, but with a serene sadness for what we could have had if they had chosen love over greed. But I had learned that I couldn't change other people. I could only change how I responded to them. One night, as I watched the stars reflect on the ocean, I wrote in my journal the words that would become my life's philosophy. I do not regret loving them. I only regret not understanding sooner that kindness should never be practiced at the cost of self-destruction. I learned that true love for others must begin with self-love, and that protecting my dignity was not an act of selfishness, but of survival. I closed the journal and smiled at the infinite horizon. At 67, I had finally learned to live for myself, and for the first time in decades, I was completely happy. 73 years carrying this family on my shoulders. 73 years giving it my all. And this is how they repay me. Mom, you stay at the farm. Someone has to look after the garden. David told me this morning, with that fake smile he inherited from his wife. Amber was standing there, in her new red dress, looking at me as if I were just another employee. And her mother, Catherine, with those expensive sunglasses, checking her phone as if I didn't exist. It's only for a week, Mrs. Margaret. You understand, she murmured without looking up. Only for a week. As if planting and watering were a game. As if these 73 years had been for nothing. I watched them get into the car, their suitcases filled with clothes I had washed and ironed, the towels I had folded, the shoes I had cleaned. They left for the coast to spend the money this land produces. While I stay here, under this burning sun, with my hands in the soil they believe belongs to them. But then, as the dust from the car settled on the road, as silence filled this empty house, the kitchen phone rang, a sound that cut the air like a knife. It was the bank. Mrs. Margaret, we need to confirm some urgent transactions, said the voice on the other end. My heart stopped, not from fear, from something deeper, from a suspicion that had been growing like a weed in my chest. What kind of transactions? I asked, though I already knew I wasn't going to like the answer. Your son David attempted to make a transfer of $50,000 this morning, and there are also attempts to change the ownership on several accounts. Since you are the primary account holder, we need your authorization. $50,000, the money we had saved from selling the cattle last month. The money that was for fixing the roof of the house, for buying the medicine I need, for ensuring this farm continued to produce. I don't authorize anything, I said in a voice I didn't even recognize myself. Block everything, right now. I hung up the phone and stood there, In this kitchen where I have prepared thousands of meals for a family that sees me as a nuisance. The yellow walls that I painted 10 years ago now seemed like silent witnesses to all I had endured in silence. That night, as I watered the tomatoes and lettuce they would eat upon their return, my phone vibrated. It was David. "Mom, what happened with the cards? We can't withdraw a single cent, can't pay for anything." His voice sounded desperate, almost hysterical. I could hear Amber screaming in the background, and Catherine cursing in that elegant tone she uses when she thinks no one is listening. "Mom, are you there? Answer me." I took a deep breath. The air smelled of damp earth and the jasmine flowers I had planted 20 years ago when I still believed this family valued me. "I'm here, David." "And be calm? We're stranded in this hotel. We can't even pay the bill. What did you do?" What I did. As if protecting my own money was a crime. As if I didn't have the right to decide about what is rightfully mine. I did what I had to do, son. "But Mom, it's an emergency. We need the money." An emergency. Their beach vacation was an emergency, but my blood pressure medicine was not. The roof leaking over my bed was not. The expenses of the farm that supports this entire family were not. The only emergency here, David, is that I finally opened my eyes. I ended the conversation at this critical moment. I have worked my whole life for this family. I have sacrificed my dreams, my youth, my health. And now I discover they were planning to take even the last thing I had left. But there's something they don't know. Something I discovered 3 days ago, when Helen, my neighbor, came over for coffee and told me what she had heard in town. Something that changes everything. This story is just beginning. 3 days ago, Helen came to visit me as she does every afternoon. She always brings her favorite mug, the white ceramic one with flowers that I gave her last year. She sat in the rocking chair on the porch, the same one where my late husband used to read the newspaper. "Margaret," she said in that soft voice she uses when she has something important to say, "I need to tell you something I heard in town." I was peeling oranges to make juice, but something in her tone made my hands stop. The peels fell to the floor like small, withered suns. "What is it, Helen?" She looked towards the road, as if afraid someone might hear us. "Yesterday, I was at old Mr. Henderson's law office. I had gone to renew the papers for my land, you remember, and while I was waiting, I overheard Amber talking on the phone. My heart started to beat faster. Amber at the lawyer's office. That couldn't be a coincidence. She was talking to someone about selling the farm, Margaret. She said they already had a buyer, that they just needed to convince you to sign some papers, that they were going to tell you it was for renewing the insurance." The oranges rolled across the floor. My hands trembled like leaves in a storm. "Are you sure about what you heard?" "As sure as my name is Helen Marie, and there's more." She also mentioned something about changing the bank accounts to David's name. She said it was more convenient for a woman your age. And then, Margaret, I heard something that chilled my blood. She said that after the sale, they were going to take you to a nursing home in the city, that they had already set aside the money to pay for it. A nursing home. As if I were a piece of old furniture that was no longer useful. As if these 73 years of life were worth nothing. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling that leaks when it rains, thinking about every strange conversation from the past few months. The times Amber and Catherine would fall silent when I entered the living room. The whispered phone calls. The papers they would quickly put away when I came near. I remembered when Amber came over 6 months ago with that green folder, insisting I sign some insurance documents. I had signed without reading, trusting them like a fool. What was really in those papers? Everything made sense now. David's insistence that I go to the bank to update my information. The constant pressure for me to give them power over my accounts, in case something happened to me. Catherine's frequent visits, who before barely spoke to me, but now came with store-bought cakes and fake smiles. I got up before dawn and walked all over the farm. I touched every tree I had planted. The avocado trees I planted when David was 10. The mango trees that grew up with him. The garden where I taught my granddaughter to recognize plants before Amber decided it was too dangerous to bring her here. This land has my footprints on every meter. My sweat watered every furrow. My tears fed every seed. And they wanted to take it from me like taking a toy from a child. The next day, very early, I walked to Helen's house. Her chickens were clucking in the yard, and the smell of burning wood came from her chimney. I needed to think. I needed a place where I felt safe. Her small kitchen always smells of cinnamon and freshly brewed coffee. Helen, I think I have to do something before it's too late. She poured me coffee in that flowered mug and sat across from me. Her eyes, the color of old honey, looked at me with an understanding that only years of true friendship can give. What do you need, Margaret? I need to go to the bank, today, and to the lawyer too. But first, I need you to help me review all the papers I've signed lately. We went back to my house and sat at the dining room table. I took out all the folders, all the documents I had saved without fully understanding them. Helen has better eyesight than me, and she knows how to read the fine print. Margaret, she said after an hour of reviewing, her voice trembling. These papers you signed last month, they give David the power to sell properties in your name. My world swayed. I had signed my own death sentence without knowing it. And this other one? This one gives him full access to all your bank accounts. Margaret, with these papers, they can do whatever they want with you, I cried. For the first time in years. I cried like a child. I cried for my naivety, for my blind trust, for having raised a son capable of betraying me like this. But the tears dried up quickly. In their place came something I hadn't felt in a long time. Rage. A clean, clear rage that filled me with an energy I thought I had lost. We went to the bank together. There they explained everything David had tried to do over the last 2 months. Loan applications using the farm as collateral, attempts to change the authorized signatures, requests for copies of all my bank statements. Mrs. Margaret, the manager, a young woman with a concerned voice, told me, luckily you had given us specific instructions years ago not to authorize anything without your physical presence. Your son seemed very upset when we told him we needed to speak with you first. He even brought a lawyer last week, insisting he had a legal right. Very upset. Of course, he was upset. His plans to rob me were failing because of a detail he had forgotten. Years ago, when my husband died, I had been cautious. I had put those restrictions in place in case one day I lost my memory. What can I do to protect myself completely? I asked. Cancel all the powers of attorney you have granted. Change all your passwords, establish new restrictions. And if you want my advice, Mrs. Margaret, do it today. Then we went to the lawyer, Mr. Davies, an older man, the kind who inspires confidence the moment you see him. His office is full of books and smells of old wood and wisdom. Mrs. Margaret, what you're telling me is very serious, but it has a solution. These documents you signed can be revoked. You were under emotional distress. You didn't have independent legal representation. He explained my rights. He showed me how to protect my assets, how to make sure no one could take what was rightfully mine. I signed new documents. I changed all the authorizations. I put legal locks in place that neither David nor his wife nor his mother-in-law could break. And if they try to force me to sign something? I asked. These documents protect you, Mrs. Margaret. No one can force you to do anything with your property. And if anyone tries, that's called coercion, and it's a crime. Besides, I have notified the bank and the notary's office. Any document they try to submit with your signature will be verified directly with you. I returned home that afternoon feeling different, as if I had woken up from a long, confusing dream. The farm looked the same green mountains in the background, the same infinite sky, the same trees I had planted with my own hands decades ago. But I was no longer the same woman who had left that morning. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt in control of my own life. That night, when David called to tell me about the trip, I already knew exactly what I was going to do. I let them leave. I let them believe they had won. That old Margaret would obediently stay home, taking care of the garden like just another employee. But while they were packing their bags, I was packing mine too. Not to go anywhere, but to stay. To plant my roots deeper than ever. And when the bank phone rang the next day, I was ready. The storm was just beginning, but for the first time in a long time, I had the umbrella. David's call woke me up on the second day. His voice sounded different, higher pitched, with that tone he used as a child when he knew he'd done something wrong. Mom, there's a problem. The cards aren't working. None of them. I sat up in bed slowly, feeling the morning sun stream through the window overlooking the yard. The chickens were already clucking, asking for their food. Life was going on as normal while theirs was falling apart 200 miles away. What kind of problem, David? We can't pay for anything. Not the hotel, not the food, not the gas. It's like all the accounts are frozen. I heard Amber screaming in the background. Her voice was distorted over the phone, but I managed to make out a few words. Useless. Your mother. Fix this. Mom, I need you to go to the bank. Right now. It must be a system error. A system error. As if I were that naive. It's not an error, David. Silence. A long silence filled with the sound of the waves I could hear in the background. They were at the beach, under expensive umbrellas, while I was supposed to be sweating in the garden. What do you mean it's not an error? I mean, I canceled all the cards. I froze all the joint accounts. I revoked all the authorizations you had. Another silence. This one heavier than the last. Mom, you can't do that. We depend on that money. We, as if we were partners. As if they had worked a single day on this farm to earn that money. And whose money do you think that is, David? It's family money. You can't just leave us stranded here. Family. That word they had been using to manipulate me for months. Family when they needed money. Family when they wanted me to sign papers. But not family when they were planning to sell my house and lock me in a nursing home. David, come home. All of you. Right now. We can't come. We don't have money for gas. Then walk or borrow or do whatever you have to do. But come home. I hung up before he could answer. My hands didn't tremble this time. I felt strangely calm, like when the shock wears off after an accident and you realize you're still alive. That morning, I worked in the garden like never before. I planted new seeds of cilantro and parsley. I watered the tomatoes that were beginning to ripen. I pulled the weeds that were growing between the lettuce. Every movement was an affirmation. This land is mine. These plants are mine. This life is mine. Helen arrived around noon, as always. But this time she didn't bring her flowered mug. She brought a bag full of freshly made pastries and a bottle of bourbon. To celebrate, she said with a smile that crinkled her whole face. Celebrate what? That you finally got your nerve back, Margaret. We sat on the porch, eating pastries and taking small sips of the bourbon that burned my throat in the best way. The midday sun fell on us like a blessing. Do you think I did the right thing, Helen? Honey, the only thing you did wrong was taking so long to do it. She then told me that for months she had seen how I was fading away, how I stopped smiling when I talked about David, how my shoulders had started to stoop under the weight of always being available for everyone. Your late husband, God rest his soul, once told me, Helen, if anything happens to me, make sure no one takes advantage of Margaret. She's too good for her own good. Those words touched my soul. My husband had seen something I had refused to see for years. The phone rang again at 3 in the afternoon. This time it was Amber. Mother-in-law, we need to talk. Her voice had lost all its usual fake sweetness. Now it sounded sharp, desperate. Speak. What's going on? Why did you do that with the accounts? What do you think, Amber? I don't know. That's why I'm asking. We're stranded here. I got up from the porch and walked into the kitchen. I needed to be moving for this conversation. You know what, Amber? I think you do know. I think you know exactly why I did what I did. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you? You don't know anything about a conversation at Mr. Henderson's law office? You don't know anything about papers to sell the farm? You don't know anything about plans to take me to a nursing home? Total silence. I couldn't even hear the waves in the background anymore. Mother-in-law? Don't call me mother-in-law. Mothers-in-law are family. And you stopped being my family the day you decided to rob me. It wasn't robbery. It was for your own good. A woman your age can't manage such a large property on her own. There it was, the truth, finally. A woman my age. As if 73 were a disease. As if experience were a disability. And who decided that? You? Your mother? My own son? We were all worried about you. Lies. You were worried about the money. About the property. About what you could get if I disappeared from the picture. I heard her pass the phone to someone else. It was Catherine. Margaret, let's be reasonable. You can't stay alone on that farm forever. You need help. You need care. Catherine's voice was condescending, as if she were explaining something to a foolish child. You know what I need, Catherine? I need you and your daughter to stay away from my family. I need you to stop manipulating my son. And I need you to understand that this farm will be mine until the day I die. You're making a terrible mistake. Without us, you can't handle the business. You don't understand banks, or taxes, or anything. There it was again. The same old song. The poor old woman who doesn't understand anything. The same woman who had managed this farm for 40 years. Who had raised cattle. Who had negotiated with buyers. Who had paid taxes and managed employees long before Amber even knew how to write her name. You know what, Catherine? You're right about one thing. I did make a terrible mistake, but it wasn't today. It was 6 months ago when I trusted you. I hung up for the second time that day. This time I trembled a little, not from fear, but from a strange energy that was coursing through my body, as if I had been asleep for years and was finally waking up completely. Helen was still on the porch, rocking gently and looking at the mountains. "Everything okay?" she asked, without turning to look at me. "Everything's perfect." That night, I had dinner alone for the first time in months without feeling lonely. I made myself some scrambled eggs with tomatoes and onions from my own garden. The silence of the house didn't weigh on me. It embraced me. After dinner, I went out to the yard and looked at the stars. It had been years since I had seen them so clearly. Maybe because it had been years since I had taken the time to look up. They would be back tomorrow. Furious, desperate, probably with a new plan to convince me I had lost my mind. But for the first time in a long time, I knew exactly who I was and what I wanted. They arrived at dusk on the third day, like a storm you see coming from afar. David's car kicked up a cloud of dust on the road that took several minutes to settle. I was watering the plants in the garden, but I left the hose running and sat in the rocking chair on the porch to wait for them. They got out of the car like actors in a poorly rehearsed play. David first, with that scolded child face he used to make when his father caught him in some mischief. Amber next, in her wrinkled green dress and her hair disheveled from the trip. And finally, Catherine, adjusting her sunglasses even though the sun was already setting. None of them looked at me directly at first. They just stood there, as if waiting for me to speak first, as if I owed them an explanation. The silence stretched so long that even the crickets fell quiet. "Well," I finally said, without getting up from the rocking chair. David was the first to walk towards the porch. His steps sounded heavy on the wooden planks his father had laid 15 years ago. "Mom, we need to talk." Talk. He sat on the step. The position he used as a child when he wanted me to forgive him for something. But he was 40, 2 years old now, and childhood tricks no longer worked on me. "I don't understand what happened. Why did you do what you did? You really don't understand, David?" Amber approached then, with those high heels that had no place on a farm and made her walk like a duck. "Mother-in-law, I think there was a misunderstanding. We never meant to hurt you." I looked at her directly for the first time. Her eyes were swollen. She had probably cried during the trip, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of frustration for having lost. "A misunderstanding? Is that what you call planning to sell my house behind my back? We just wanted what was best for you." Catherine had stayed by the car, as if ready to flee at any moment, but her voice carried clearly to the porch. "Margaret, a woman your age shouldn't be alone in such an isolated place. It's dangerous." I got up from the rocking chair for the first time since they arrived. My legs felt solid, firm, as if they had regained a strength I had forgotten I had. "Dangerous? You know what's dangerous, Catherine? Trusting family who plan to rob you? Signing papers without reading because you think your own son would never harm you?" David stood up too. In his eyes, I saw something I had never seen before. Fear. Fear that his plan had completely failed. "Mom, the papers you signed were just to protect you, so that if something happened to you, we could help you." "Protect me? By calling me crazy? By telling people in town I'm losing my memory?" The color drained from his face. He didn't know that I had heard that conversation last week when they thought I was napping. "I never." "Yes, you did. You told Mr. Henderson that I was starting to show signs of dementia, that sometimes I didn't remember things. that it was necessary for you to have legal control over my decisions. Amber took a step back. Her heels sank into the soft garden soil. David, maybe we should go. She's upset. I'm not leaving. She's my mom, and I'm going to fix this. Fix what exactly? I asked. My voice came out louder than I expected, filling the space between us. Fix this misunderstanding. Make you understand that everything we did was with you in mind. End quote. I stepped off the porch and walked until I was standing in front of him. David is tall. He always was. But at that moment, I felt taller than him. You want me to understand? Fine. Then explain to me why you had a buyer for the farm. Explain why you had already set aside money for a nursing home. Explain why Amber was looking up prices for apartments in the city. Every word I said was like a blow. I saw them shrink, search for excuses they no longer had. Mom, no more lies. I've heard enough lies. Catherine finally approached, walking with that fake elegance she uses when she wants to impress. Margaret, be reasonable. You can't live alone forever. You need someone to take care of your affairs. Someone like you? People who plan to rob me and then throw me out like an old dog? No one was going to throw you out. The home we chose is very good. It has gardens and activities. There was the full confession. She wasn't even trying to deny it anymore. A home, with gardens and activities. And when did you ask me if I wanted gardens and activities? David ran his hands through his hair, frustrated. Because we knew you would say no. You're too stubborn to accept help. Help? Is selling my house help? Is stealing my savings help? We weren't going to steal anything. The money was going to be used to take care of you. Lies. The money was going to be used for you to live comfortably while I rotted in a nursing home. Amber started crying again. Those manipulative tears she used whenever things didn't go her way. Mother-in-law, please, we're family. We can fix this. Family? You call this family? I walked to the garden and cut a white rose from the bush I planted when my granddaughter was born. I held it in my hands, feeling the soft thorns against my fingers. Do you know what real family is? Family is Helen, who warned me about your plans. Family is Mr. Davies, who helped me protect my rights without asking for anything in return. Family is this land that has sustained me for 40 years. But we're your blood, David shouted, desperate. Blood means nothing if the heart is rotten. Catherine stepped forward then, with that fake smile she reserved for special occasions. Margaret, let's be practical. You need us more than you think. Who's going to take care of you when you get sick? Who's going to manage the farm business? I will take care of myself, as I have for 73 years. And as for the farm business, I have some news for you. I went back to the porch and took from my purse the papers I had signed that morning with Mr. Davies. Yesterday, I signed a new will. Everything I have will go to a foundation that helps abused women. Not a single cent, not an inch of land will be for you. The silence that followed was different from all the others. It was a silence of defeat, of destroyed plans, of dreams of easy money evaporating like dew in the morning. David sat on the step again, but this time not like a child seeking forgiveness. He sat like a man who finally understood the consequences of his actions. Mom, you can't do that. I'm your only son. Being my only son gave you rights, David, but it also gave you obligations, and you chose to betray me instead of taking care of me. Amber had stopped crying. Now she was looking at me with a pure rage that finally showed her true face. You're crazy. Completely crazy. David, do something. What do you want me to do? I don't know, but you can't let her take everything from us. No one is taking anything from you, I said calmly. You are simply losing something that was never yours. The sun had set completely. The first stars were beginning to appear in the violet sky. It was time for them to leave. Go, I told them. This house is no longer your home. David looked at me as if he hadn't understood the words. As if it were impossible that his mother, the woman who had cleaned his scraped knees and prepared his favorite meals for 40 years, was telling him to leave. Mom, you can't be serious. I have never been more serious in my life. Amber approached then, with the desperation of a cornered animal that made her look ugly despite all her makeup. Mother-in-law, think carefully. Without us, you have no one. What are you going to do when you get sick? When you need help? I'm going to do the same thing I've always done. Solve my problems on my own. But you're 73 years old? And you're 35, but you act like you're 5. Age is no excuse for being useless, Amber. Catherine had already gotten into the car, probably calculating that this battle was lost. But she shouted from the window, "Margaret, this isn't over. We have legal rights. The papers you signed give us power." Ugh. Those papers? I took the folder I had taken to the lawyer out of my purse. Are you referring to these papers that have already been nullified? Or these other ones, where it's proven that you pressured me to sign without legal representation? Her face fell. Even from a distance, I could see how reality hit her like a hammer. That's impossible. Those documents are valid. They were valid, until Mr. Davies proved there was emotional coercion. It turns out the law protects senior citizens from abusive children. Who would have thought? David stood up abruptly, so fast that the step planks creaked. We are not abusive. Everything we did was for your own good. For my own good? David, look around. Look at this farm I built with my own hands. Look at this house where I raised you. Do you really think I don't know what's good for me? I walked to the garden where my roses were, the same ones I had planted when he was little, and asked me why flowers had thorns. To protect themselves from those who want to hurt them, I had explained then. I never thought that one day he would be one of those threats. Look, David, do you see these roses? I planted them 20 years ago. I've cared for them, pruned them, protected them from pests. No one else knows how to care for them like I do. No one else knows how much water they need, when to fertilize them, how to protect them from the cold. I turned to him, holding the white rose I had cut. This farm is the same. I know how every foot of this land works. I know every tree, every animal, every problem that can arise. I've managed droughts, floods, pests, low prices, high prices. I've done it alone for years, especially after your father died. But Mom. No, let me finish. In all these years, did you ever see me fail? Did a harvest ever get lost because of me? Were we ever unable to pay the bills? Did this family ever go hungry? He couldn't answer because the answer was no. I had never failed. I had never let anything bad happen to this family. So why did you decide I could no longer take care of myself? Why? Because Amber told me that. There at Island, Amber told you. And since when does Amber know more about my life than I do? Amber stepped forward with her fists clenched. I was just trying to help. Your son was worried about you. Lies. My son was worried about the money, and you were worried about getting a house without having to work to pay for it. That's not true, isn't it? Then explain to me why the day after I signed the papers, you had already set aside $50,000 to buy an apartment in the city. David's face went white. He didn't know I had seen the messages on his phone when he left it on the table during lunch. How do you know that? Because I'm not blind, David, nor deaf, nor stupid. I saw the messages with the real estate agent. I saw the floor plans for the apartment you wanted to buy with my money. Catherine got out of the car again, but this time she looked like a wounded beast. All of this is normal. Children always inherit from their parents. We were just speeding up the process. Speeding up? Do you mean you were waiting for me to die? No, I mean it was logical to plan for the future. The future. My future. Without asking me what I wanted for my future. I walked to the fence that divides my property from Helen's. In the distance, I could see the light from her kitchen. She was probably making dinner, unaware that the war that would define the rest of my life was unfolding here. Do you know what my future was in your plans? 3 meals a day in a communal dining room, a single bed in a room I would share with a stranger, scheduled activities as if I were a 5-year-old child, visits once a month if you had time. The home we chose was very good, Amber protested. Did you visit it? Well, we saw the pictures online. The pictures online? You were going to lock up your husband's mother in a place you didn't even know in person. David approached then, with that lost child face that broke my heart despite everything. Mom, forgive me. I know we messed up, but we can fix this. We can start over. For a moment, just a moment, I was tempted to forgive, to hug him like when he was little and had nightmares, to tell him everything was going to be okay. But then I remembered the conversation I had overheard 3 nights ago when they thought I was asleep. David telling Amber, "It won't be long now. When she's in the home, we can do whatever we want with the farm." Start over? As if nothing happened? Yes, exactly. We can forget all this. David, look me in the eyes. He did. In those eyes, I saw the boy he had been, but also the man he had become, a man capable of betraying his own mother for money. I can't forget, and even if I could, I don't want to. Why? Because what you did taught me something important, that family is not just blood. Family is respect, it is affection, it is protection. You took all 3 things from me. Amber started walking towards the car, dragging her feet on the ground. David, let's go. She's not going to change her mind. I'm not leaving, she's my mom. Your mom has already made her decision, and we can't stay here like beggars. David looked at me one last time. In his eyes was something I had never seen before, the understanding that he had lost something forever, not just the inheritance, not just the money. He had lost his mother. Is there really no way to fix this? There was a way, David. It was called not betraying me. Mom, go, please, before I say something I might regret. He stood there for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. Finally, he walked to the car with slow steps, as if each step pained him. Before getting in, he turned one last time. I love you, Mom. I loved you too, David. Past tense. The car started, kicking up dust again. I watched the taillights recede down the road until they became red dots in the darkness. When they disappeared completely, I sat on the porch step. For the first time in days, everything was silent. And for the first time in years, that silence felt like peace. I sat on the porch step until the stars completely filled the sky. The night air smelled of jasmine and damp earth, a scent that had always calmed me, but that night had a different flavor. It tasted of freedom. Helen appeared on the path connecting our properties, walking slowly with a steaming mug in her hands. Mind if I sit with you? She asked, though she already knew the answer. Not at all. In fact, I need the company. She settled on the step next to me and handed me the mug. Hot chocolate with cinnamon. Exactly what my soul needed at that moment. I saw them leave, she said after a while. Everything okay? Everything's perfect. We sat in silence, sharing the chocolate. Helen has that wisdom of knowing when to talk and when to simply be present. You know what's the strangest thing? I finally said. I thought I would feel sad. I thought I would cry, that I would regret it. And you don't feel that way? I feel free, as if a weight I didn't know I was carrying has been lifted from my shoulders. Helen nodded slowly. My grandmother used to say that sometimes you have to prune the sick branches so the tree can grow healthy. Ah, bling. That night, I slept better than I had in months. I didn't wake up at 3 a.m. worrying if I had properly secured the bank accounts. I didn't get up thinking about what excuse Amber would invent to ask for money. For the first time in a while, my mind was at peace. The next morning, as I was making coffee, the phone rang. For a moment, I thought it would be David, apologizing or trying to manipulate me again, but it was Mr. Davies. Mrs. Margaret, good morning. How are you feeling? Like new, Mr. Davies. And you? Very well. I'm calling because I wanted to confirm some details of the will we signed yesterday. Are you sure about your decisions? More sure than ever. Perfect. I also wanted to inform you that your son came to my office very early this morning. He wanted to know if there was any way to contest the changes you made. I wasn't surprised. David had always been persistent when he wanted something. And what did you tell him? I explained that the documents are perfectly legal and that you are in full possession of your mental faculties. I also suggested that if he wanted to reconcile with you, he should come and talk to you directly, not through lawyers. And what did he say? He left without a word. After hanging up, I decided it was time to start my new life in earnest. I couldn't stay lamenting the past. I had to build something new, something meaningful. I walked all over the farm, seeing it with different eyes. It was no longer just the property I had inherited from my husband. It was no longer just the place where I had raised my son. Now it was my future, my project, my legacy. The house needed repairs. The kitchen roof had leaks we had ignored for months because we didn't have the money to fix it, according to Amber. But now that I didn't have to support 3 non-working adults, I did have money. I called Mr. Peterson, the town's contractor, an honest man who had worked for us for years. "Mrs. Margaret, what a pleasure to hear from you. How can I help you?" "Mr. Peterson, I need you to come and look at the house. I want to make all the repairs we've been putting off." "All of them? Are you sure? That's going to be a big project." "I have time, and I have money. When can you come?" "I'll stop by tomorrow morning, if that works for you." Next, I called the veterinarian. For months, I had wanted to buy more chickens and maybe some goats, but Catherine complained about the noise and the smell. "Dr. Bell, this is Margaret. Could you advise me on expanding my coop?" "Of course. What do you have in mind?" "I want to start a small farm. Chickens, goats, maybe some pigs. Something that will give me a steady income but also keep me busy." "That sounds like an excellent idea. Is your family on board?" "My family is me, doctor, and I am completely on board." That afternoon, Helen and I sat at the dining room table making plans. She brought paper and pencil, and I laid all my ideas on the table. "What if we start a small home-cooked meal business?" Helen suggested. "Your cooking is delicious, and I know how to make preserves and jams." "Do you think it would work?" "There's no one in town who sells homemade food. All the women work outside the home now. I'm sure there's a market." We started crunching the numbers. With the savings I no longer had to share with David and his family, I could invest in basic equipment for a small commercial kitchen. "And we could sell at the Saturday market," Helen added, "or even do home delivery." For the first time in years, I was excited about something. I had a project, a purpose, a reason to get up every morning that wasn't just survival. That night, as I ate dinner alone in the kitchen, I realized something. The house felt bigger, not emptier, bigger, as if I had reclaimed spaces I didn't know I had lost. The phone rang at 9 o'clock at night. It was a number I didn't recognize. "Margaret?" The voice was of a young, shy woman. "Yes, this is Margaret. Who is this, please?" It's the wife of Jeremy, your neighbor, Mrs. Thompson's son. She gave me your number." Jeremy, the young man who had studied business administration and now worked in the city. "What can I do for you, honey?" "Mrs. Thompson told me you're thinking of starting a food business." I work in marketing, and I was wondering if you would need any help." "What kind of help?" "Well, I could help you with social media, with label design, with promotion. I would love to be part of a project like that." "And how much would you charge for that help?" "Nothing at first. If the business works out, we could talk about a small partnership. But first, I want to help you get off the ground." I hung up the phone with a huge smile. I didn't just have a project. I had a team. The next day, Mr. Peterson arrived early with his tape measure and notebook. We went over the whole house, from the roof to the foundations. "Mrs. Margaret, this house is solid. It just needs some love and maintenance." "How long would it take to make it like new?" "About 3 months, working every day. But it's going to look like a palace." "Do it." While Mr. Peterson was taking measurements, I walked to the back of the property, where I had always wanted to build a small workshop. My late husband had dreamed of having his carpentry shop there, but we never found the time or the money. Now I had both. I took out my phone and dialed the number of the construction company. "Good morning. I need a quote for a new construction." "What type of construction?" "A carpentry workshop. And next to it, a small commercial kitchen." "When do you need it by?" "I'm in no hurry, but I want it to be perfect." For the first time in 73 years, I was building something just for me, without having to ask for permission, without having to justify expenses, without having to listen to complaints about the noise or the mess. It was my money, my land, my decision, and it felt glorious. 6 months passed before I heard from David again. 6 months in which my life changed completely, as if I had emerged from a chrysalis and could finally fly. The house turned out beautiful. Mr. Peterson hadn't exaggerated when he said it would look like a palace. New roofs, restored floors, walls painted a soft yellow that made the whole house feel full of sun. The commercial kitchen worked perfectly, and the carpentry workshop was exactly as my husband would have dreamed. Helen and I had turned our home-cooked meal project into a small empire. We sold pies on Tuesdays, pastries on Thursdays, and preserves every day. On weekends, the town market was filled with people who came specifically to buy our products. Mrs. Margaret, Mr. Henderson, the notary, would tell me every time he passed by our stall, "You've aged backwards 10 years." And it was true. I felt stronger, clearer, more alive than I had in a long time. I worked from 5 in the morning until 7 at night. But it was work that filled me with satisfaction instead of draining me. Jeremy's wife, whose name was Ashley, had been a blessing. She created a social media page that had thousands of followers. She named it Grandma Margaret's Kitchen, and although I protested because I wasn't anyone's grandmother, the name stuck. We had hired 3 young women from the town to help us. Young women who needed work and were quick learners. The house, which had been so quiet for years, was now filled with laughter and conversation from early in the morning. We had also started a small program to help women in difficult situations, women who, like me, had been manipulated or mistreated by their families. We taught them skills, gave them temporary work, and helped them get legal advice. "It's as if this house had been waiting all this time for you to wake it up," Ashley told me one afternoon. She was right. The house had been sleeping, waiting for me to have the courage to live my own life. It was a Tuesday afternoon when David arrived. I was in the workshop, sanding some boards to make a new shelf, when I heard the car on the road. But this time he didn't arrive with anger or desperation. He came alone, walking slowly, like someone who comes to apologize. I saw him from the workshop window. He had lost weight. His clothes looked less cared for, and he had a several-day-old beard that made him look older. He stood in the yard, looking at all the changes, as if he couldn't believe it was the same house. I came out of the workshop, wiping my hands on my apron. I didn't run to him, but I didn't hide either. "Hi, Mom." "Hello, David." We stood there, separated by a few feet that felt like miles. "The house looks different. It's alive again." He nodded slowly, as if he understood the message behind my words. "Can I sit down?" "It's your decision." He sat on the porch step, in the same place he had sat last time, but now he looked small, defeated. "Mom, I came to apologize." I didn't answer. I had learned the power of silence. "I know what we did was wrong. I know there's no excuse, but I wanted you to know that I've realized everything." "Everything what?" "That you were right. That Amber manipulated me. That I lost the most important person in my life because of greed." "And Amber?" "She left. 3 months ago. She took everything she could and left with a man she met in the city. I didn't feel satisfaction hearing that. I didn't feel pity either. It was simply information. And Catherine is in a nursing home. Her own son committed her when she ran out of money. The irony was perfect, but I said nothing. Mom, I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know it's probably too late. But I wanted you to know that I've learned. That by losing you, I realized what really matters in life. I sat in the rocking chair but kept my distance. "What do you want, David?" "Nothing. I'm not here to ask for anything. I'm just here to tell you that I love you, that I've always loved you, even if my actions said otherwise." "And what have you been doing these months?" "Working. I work in construction now. It's hard, but it's honest. I sleep in a rented room, eat at cheap diners. I'm trying to understand how I became so stupid." For the first time in the conversation, his eyes filled with real tears. Not tears of manipulation, but of real remorse. "I see the life you've built without us, and I realize that we were the ones holding you back. You didn't need us to take care of you. We were the ones who needed you." At that moment, Helen came out of the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. "Margaret, everything okay?" "Everything's fine. Helen, I'd like you to meet David, my son." Helen looked at him with that look older women have when they're sizing up a man, a look that sees straight into the soul. "A pleasure, David. I've heard a lot about you." David turned red. He knew exactly what kind of things Helen had heard. "The pleasure is mine, ma'am." "Are you staying for dinner?" David looked at me, waiting for my answer. "You can stay if you want, but not as family, as a guest." "I understand." Helen left, but not before winking at me. She knew she was giving me space to decide what to do. Mom, do you think that someday we could try to be a family again? I don't know, David. Family isn't something you can break and glue back together like a vase. Once trust is broken, things are never the same again. I know, but maybe they could be different. Better. Better how? More honest, more respectful, more real. I looked at him for a long time. In his eyes, I no longer saw the manipulative man who had tried to rob me. I saw the boy he had been, but I also saw something new. Real humility. Do you know what you have to do if you want to try to rebuild something with me? What? You have to earn it. Not with words, but with actions. You have to prove to me over months, maybe years, that you have truly changed. How? By working honestly. By living honestly. By respecting my decisions, even if you don't like them. By treating me like a whole human being, not like an old woman who needs to be cared for. And if I do all that? If you do all that, maybe, someday, we can be friends. But we will never go back to being the mother and son we were before. That relationship died the day you decided to betray me. He was quiet for a long time. Finally, he nodded. I understand. And I accept those conditions. Good. Then you can start by staying for dinner. But then you leave. And if you want to come back, you let me know beforehand. Thank you, Mom. You don't know what this means to me. Don't call me Mom yet. Call me Margaret. You have to earn the right to call me Mom again. That night, the three of us had dinner in silence. David ate slowly, as if it were the first home-cooked meal he'd had in months. It probably was. When he finished, he helped me wash the dishes without being asked. Helen had gone to her house, leaving us alone. The food was delicious, he told me. Thank you. Can I ask you something? Ask. Are you happy? The question took me by surprise. No one had asked me that in years. Yes, I said after thinking about it. For the first time in a long time, I am happy. He left that night without promising to return, without asking for anything more. He just left, and for the first time in months, the goodbye didn't feel like a war. David came back 3 weeks later. This time he called before coming, as I had asked him to. Margaret, can I visit you on Sunday? I wanted to help you with something if you need it. Help me with what? With whatever. I know you have the food business. Maybe you need someone to carry heavy things, or fix something. The offer surprised me. For years, David had avoided any physical work on the farm. He always had an excuse. His back hurt. He had important things to do. That kind of work was for employees. Come on Sunday at 8 in the morning. There are a few things I need fixed. He arrived on time, dressed in work clothes and old boots. He looked different, thinner but also stronger, as if the physical labor had hardened him in a good way. What do you need me to do? The goat pen needs repairing. Some of the boards are loose. He worked for 4 hours without complaining. I watched him from the kitchen window while I prepared dough for pastries. He moved differently, with more care, with more respect for the tools and materials. He was not the same man who once considered this type of work beneath him. At noon, I brought him a glass of cold water and a plate of food. Thank you, he said, and sat down to eat on the ground, leaning against a tree. Why are you doing this, David? Fixing the pen? Number all of this. Coming, working, acting like you're a different person. He chewed slowly before answering. Because when I lost you, I realized I had lost the only person who really knew me, the only one who loved me unconditionally. I loved you unconditionally, until you put conditions on it. I know, and I also realized something else. What? That I never really knew you. I thought you were just my mom, the woman who took care of me. But you're so much more than that. He looked around, seeing the thriving business, the improvements to the house, the new energy in everything. You're a businesswoman. You're a leader. You're a woman who can build an incredible life from scratch. And I was so blind I didn't see it. His words reached me, but I didn't let myself get carried away by emotion. And what do you want to do with that information? I want to get to know you, for real, as the person you are, not as the idea I had of you. That's going to take time. I have time. He finished his work and left without asking for anything more, without asking when he could come back, without suggesting we eat together, without trying to force an intimacy that no longer existed. Over the next few months, David came every 2 weeks. He always called before. He always came to work. He fixed the roof of the chicken coop, painted the fence, helped build a new storage area for the business. Helen watched him with the prudence of an older woman who has seen many broken promises. "What do you think of him?" I asked her one afternoon. "That he's trying to be different. But time will tell if it's real or just an act." "How can I tell the difference? Men who really change don't make a show of their change. They just change." She was right. David didn't talk much during his visits. He didn't try to impress me with grand gestures or dramatic promises. He just worked, ate what I offered, and left. One day he arrived with bruises on his hands. "What happened to you?" "A fight at work. A coworker was harassing a new girl, saying nasty things to her. I told him to stop." "And?" "He told me to mind my own business. I told him that respecting women was my business." He hadn't said those words to impress me. He had said them because it was the truth. And for the first time in months, I felt something like pride for my son. But the real change I saw 6 months later, when he arrived accompanied by an older woman. "Margaret, I'd like you to meet Mrs. Davis. She's my boss on the construction site." Mrs. Davis was a woman in her 60s, weathered by the sun and work, with intelligent eyes and strong hands. "Mrs. Margaret, your son has told me a lot about you. I wanted to meet the woman who raised one of my best workers." David turned red. "David is responsible, punctual, and never complains about hard work," Mrs. Davis continued. "But most importantly, he respects the women on the team. That's not common in this business." After they left, I thought about Mrs. Davis's words. David had really changed, not just with me, but in all aspects of his life. He called me that night. "Margaret, tell me. I wanted to thank you." "For what?" "For giving me the chance to get to know you, and for teaching me what respect means." "I didn't teach you anything, David. You decided to learn." "Maybe, but you had to be very strong to cut me off when it was necessary. Another mother would have forgiven me without another thought, and I would have remained the same terrible man. And now? Now I'm different. Not perfect, but different. And it's thanks to you having the courage to tell me the truth." A year after that first reconciliation visit, David arrived with a proposal. "Margaret, I've been thinking about something." "About what?" "Would you like for us to be partners?" "Partners in what?" "In the business. Not as a son who inherits, but as a partner who contributes work and earns his share." The idea intrigued me. "What would you contribute?" "Physical labor, deliveries, building a larger kitchen if you decide to expand. And something more important, respect for your leadership. And what would you want in return? A fair salary, a share of the profits if the business grows, and maybe, someday, if I earn it, for you to call me your son again." I looked at him for a long time. In his face, I no longer saw the manipulative man who had tried to rob me. I saw someone who had paid the price for his mistakes and had decided to build something better. And what if things go wrong? If we fight again? Then we part ways as partners who didn't work out, but not as enemies. And if it works? If it works, we build something together, something we can both be proud of. It was a risky proposal, but it was also an honest one. "Give me time to think about it. All the time you need." That night, I spoke with Helen. "What do you think?" "I think he's not the same man who betrayed you, but I also think you're not the same woman who let herself be betrayed. Do you think I should try? I think you should do what makes you happy, but with your eyes wide open." 2 weeks later, I gave him my answer. "I accept the partnership, but with very clear conditions. Whatever you say, a written contract, a review every 6 months, and at the first sign of disrespect, it's all over." "I accept." "Good. Then we start on Monday." "And, David?" "Yes?" "You can call me Mom again. You've earned it." For the first time in almost 2 years, I saw him cry, but these were tears of gratitude, not of manipulation. "Thank you, Mom. I won't fail you again." "I know, because if you do, this time there won't be a third chance." "I know, and I promise you won't need one." 3 years have passed since David and I became partners. 3 years in which we have built something that neither of us could have imagined when everything fell apart. The business grew beyond our wildest dreams. Grandma Margaret's Kitchen now has 2 locations, one in town and one in the city. We employ 15 people, all women from the area who needed decent work. Ashley, the young woman who helped us with marketing, is now our general manager. But the most important thing is not the numbers in the bank accounts. The most important thing is what we built as a family. David kept every one of his promises. He works from 5 in the morning until night. He handles deliveries. He supervises the construction of new facilities. And never, not once, has he questioned my decisions as the boss. "You know what I like most about working with you?" he told me recently, as we were loading boxes for a large delivery. "What?" "That I finally see you for who you really are. Not as the mom who took care of me, but as the smart and strong woman you always were." Those words filled my heart in a way I hadn't felt in years. Helen is still my partner and my best friend. She now officially lives in the house with me. We turned the guest room into her personal bedroom. And at night we sit on the porch planning new projects while we drink herbal tea we grow in our garden. Can you imagine if they had told us 5 years ago that we would be successful businesswomen in our 70s? She says, laughing. "I would have told you that you were crazy. And you would have been wrong." The program to help abused women became a real foundation. We have a small shelter at the back of the property where women fleeing abusive situations can stay while they rebuild their lives. We teach them skills, help them with legal advice, and support them until they can stand on their own. Yesterday, a 25-year-old woman arrived with 2 small children. Her husband had threatened to take the children away if she left him. The same threat Amber had used on me, but with my own resources. "Can I really stay here without paying anything?" she asked me with eyes full of fear. "Not only can you stay, but you're going to learn to do something you like that will give you financial independence. And when you're ready to leave, we'll help you find your own place." "Why are you doing this for me?" "You don't know me." "Because all women deserve the opportunity to live with dignity. And because someone taught me that sometimes you have to be very brave to save your own life." This morning, as I was preparing dough for Tuesday's pies, the phone rang. It was Mr. Davies. "Mrs. Margaret, I'm calling to give you some news." "Good or bad?" "Very good. Your foundation just received an anonymous donation of $50,000. I sat in the nearest chair. $50,000. The same amount David had tried to steal years ago. Do you know who made it? I can't tell you, but I have my suspicions. That afternoon, when David arrived from work, I confronted him. "It was you who donated the money to the foundation." He turned red, just like when he was a child, and I caught him doing something he shouldn't. "How did you know?" "Because it's exactly $50,000, the same amount you tried to steal. It's not all the money I owe you, but it's a start. David, that money was for you too. You're my partner." "No, Mom. That money was my way of closing a circle, of turning something bad into something good." I got up and hugged him. A real, deep hug, full of the love that had been stored away for years of pain. "I'm proud of you. And I'm proud to be your son." This afternoon, as the sun sets over the mountains that have seen my whole life, I sit in the rocking chair on the porch reflecting on these last few years. The house is full of life again. I can hear laughter from the kitchen where the girls are finishing up cleaning after a day's work. I can hear voices from the shelter where the women we are helping are reading stories to their children. I can hear the sound of the goats and chickens in the pen that David repaired with his own hands. Helen comes out of the kitchen with 2 cups of hot chocolate, as she does every night. "What are you thinking about?" she asks. "That my husband was right." "About what?" "He once told me that women are like trees, that we can survive the most terrible droughts, but that when the rains come, we bloom more beautifully than before." He was a wise man. Yes, and I think he would have liked to see what I've become. David arrives in his truck, tired but smiling. He now lives in a small house he bought in town, but he comes to have dinner with us almost every night. "How was your day?" I ask him. "Perfect. We delivered everything on time, the clients were happy, and Mrs. Davis offered me a bigger contract for next month." "And are you going to accept it?" "Only if you agree. I don't want it to affect our business." That's the difference. Now he asks me. Now he respects my opinions. Now he understands that we are partners, not boss and employee. Except, the business can manage on its own for a few weeks. Thanks, Mom. The three of us have dinner in the dining room, talking about plans to expand the shelter and maybe open a third branch. Ashley wants us to explore the possibility of selling our products online throughout the country. Can you imagine, Margaret? Helen says. Women all over America eating your pies. Our pies, I correct her. We built this together. After dinner, David goes to his house, and Helen retires to her room. I stay on the porch a while longer, looking at the stars that shine brighter than ever. I think about the woman I was 5 years ago, a woman who had become invisible in her own home, a woman who had lost her voice, her strength, her dignity, a woman who was so used to giving that she had forgotten she also had the right to receive. That woman died the day I decided to freeze the bank accounts. She died when I chose to defend myself instead of remaining a victim. She died when I understood that true love is not sacrificing your dignity for others, but respecting your own and teaching others to respect it too. In her place, this woman was born, an entrepreneur, a leader, a protector of other women, a mother to a son who finally understands what respect means. The phone rings one last time before I go to bed. It's Ashley, the manager. Mrs. Margaret, I'm sorry to bother you so late, but I wanted to give you some news. What happened? A national magazine just called. They want to do an article on women entrepreneurs over 70. You are their first choice. An article about me. About you and about everything you've built. They say your story is inspiring for thousands of women who feel trapped in their own lives. After hanging up, I walk to the garden where my roses are. The same ones I planted 20 years ago to teach David about the thorns that protect beauty. I cut a white rose, the same variety I cut the night he left. But this time I don't cut it with pain. I cut it with gratitude. Gratitude for having had the courage to say enough. Gratitude for having found the strength to build a new life. Gratitude for having learned that it is never too late to bloom. I look up at the starry sky and whisper the words my husband told me in our last year together. A legacy is not a monument, Margaret. It is a map you leave for others to find their own way. I finally understand what he meant. My legacy is not the businesses I built or the money I earned. My legacy is the women I helped find their strength. It's the son who learned to respect. It's the living proof that it is never too late to rescue your own life. I go into the house and turn off the lights one by one. Tomorrow will be another day full of work, of projects, of women who need help and hope. And I will be ready, because I am finally who I was always meant to be, Margaret. Simply Margaret, and that is more than enough.